Hello, thank you for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguela. We'll begin with a stance by UNESCO's Convention Against Discrimination in Education. That was CAD 1960, which is the first instrument in the field of the right to education and defines education in Article 1, subsection 2 as all types and levels of education, including access to education, the standard and quality of education as enshrined in the Constitution and the Child Rights Act. It is the right of every child to education. A nation's vitality and commitment to economic development anchors on its education strategy, which hinges on the quality of schooling and lifelong learning experience it provides to the citizens, amongst other vital developmental catalysts. Well, governments at all levels recognizes this and have continued in their own efforts to demonstrate commitment with formulation of various educational policies and programs, of course, with the expectation of meeting the country's need to bridge the infrastructural deficit of providing basic education in the country. Now, the Universal Basic Education Program was introduced in 1999 as a reform program aimed at providing greater access to ensuring quality of basic education throughout the country. Free, compulsory and universal basic education for every child at primary and junior secondary school age is mandatory. And Section 9, subsection C of the UBE Act 2004 provides that the Commission is to prescribe the minimum standards for basic education in Nigeria, in line with the national policy on education to ensure effective monitoring of the standards. Although primary education is officially free and compulsory, a report by UNICEF says about 10.5 million of the country's children, talking about Nigeria now, aged between 5 to 14 years, are not in school. Only 61% from ages 6 to 11 regularly attend primary school, and only 35.6% of children aged 36 to 59 months receive early childhood education. Our focus on Platform is revamping basic education in Nigeria, and our guest is the Executive Secretary, Universal Basic Education Commission, that is UBEC, Dr. Hamid Boboyi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Before we bring in our panelists, we'll just let you know a little bit of who our guest is. Dr. Hamid Boboyi holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in History from Northwestern University, Evanston, Illinois, USA, where he obtained his master's degree and finally capping it with a PhD in History Educational Institutions. Dr. Boboyi began his experience as a teacher assistant in the Department of History, the same university, talking about Northwestern University, Evanston, Illinois, that was in 1984, where he further served as a teaching fellow and research assistant. His working career in the U.S. culminated into his appointment as a research fellow in the same university that lasted up till 1992. Now, in a bid to give back to his country, he returned home to serve his country in different capacities. Dr. Boboyi has served as a member of different committees and chairman of reputable universities. A significant milestone in his professional career was his appointment as director of Arewa House Center for Research and Historical Documentation, Ahmadu Bello University, Kaduna, where he recorded remarkable strides, also serving with state governments, different government agencies and non-governmental organizations in developing sustainable policies in the areas of education, culture, and the economy. Dr. Hamid Boboyi's academic accomplishments are recognized both nationally and internationally, with various publications to his credit. He has also been in the forefront of the promotion of national and regional integration and has deployed his professional competence in initiating and facilitating peace-building efforts at national and regional levels. Dr. Boboyi is Chairman, Technical Committee on Northern Nigeria Peace Conference, Director and Member, Technical Committee of the National Development Project, Member, Nigerian Institute of Management, and Member, Board of Trustees, Girl Child Concerns, among distinguished bodies. I could go on, but we'll leave that where it is. Well done, Dr. Boboyi, for that remarkable profile. Okay, our panelist is one of our regular, head of our education desk here in NTA, Rashidat Mustafa Olagunju. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on platform.
Thank you for having me, Ruth.
All right. So, Dr. Boboyi, the conversation is on revamping basic education in Nigeria, and going by your records, where you started off and where you are at the moment, you have been, so passionate about seeing basic education, thrive in Nigeria. But I know there are constraints. Yeah, a lot of constraints. Well, if we want to, give a narrative of what the basic education system in Nigeria is for us, how is the picture like?
Well, thank you very much for first and foremost inviting me to this very important forum that the NTA has been having for quite some time. And also to focus on the issue of basic education. Because as you have said earlier in your introduction, any nation that neglects this this first tier, isn't it, from ECCDE to primary school to junior secondary school, is doing it at a great cost to its future and for its future. And I think it's very important for us to focus and understand so far the issues that have been going on within the basic education subsector. We need to look at the earlier problems before the establishment of UBEC and how UBEC came to stabilize the situation, at least providing some little funding. I remember I was in Arewa House before UBEC came into being. And part of the crisis we had to establish the Northern Education Research Project under Arewa House, Ahmadu Bello University, to focus on those issues that we felt had to be addressed by the state governments, especially in the north. Dilapidated classrooms as you move around, lack of teachers, lack of supervision, a lot of other issues, and poor learning outcomes that had been the bane. So, and I think an issue that we were not even talking about at that time was the issue of out-of-school children. The rates were not actually what we are talking about now. The rates were much higher in terms of those children who are not really going to school. I think what the UBE Act, isn't it, helped is to come and provide some consistent funding to state governments. A lot of people think that UBEC is the one that runs all the schools in Nigeria. I meet, there are times I will meet many people, isn't it, who will tell me that, oh, look here, sir, in your school, I'm a teacher in your school. I say, which of my schools are you talking about, isn't it? They say, no, I am in this particular village doing this, doing that. I say, yeah, it's good. You are teaching in our school, quite all right, isn't it? But the federal government does not own a school. It doesn't employ a teacher in the entire system. And so at the end of the day, I think, we need to now put this into perspective. UBEC is coming to see how does it provide little funding to state governments. So that state governments now who have the primary responsibility. Under the Constitution, I think there is, sometimes people talk about concurrent lists and so on and so on. I'm not sure whether primary education and secondary education are even on the concurrent list, isn't it? And that's why the federal government had to be very cautious in terms of what could it do to support states. So that support started in, I think about 2005. And it has been quite consistent. It has provided a lifeline. But for that support to have the traction that is required, the state governments must also be able to come up and really, isn't it, take the ownership of this particular process and be able to put in more resources in this particular.
Indeed, we'll get to that part where we would look at the role of the state government. Rashidat, I'm sure you want to come in here.
Yes, maybe we should just digress a bit.
Yes.
Let's talk of one of the burning issues in Nigeria now. Let's talk about Safe School Initiative.
Yes, yes.
Yes, with the recent happenings around. Okay, as the ES of UBEC and with your knowledge so far, how do you think we can surmount this challenge?
Especially, following that question, UBEC is saddled with that responsibility of coordination and providing this funding, to schools, infrastructure, because the Safe School Initiative revolves around adequate infrastructure to ensure safe school environment.
Infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, isn't it? The Safe School Initiative has been part of it. But again, let's begin to understand and bring in the problems that led to the schools becoming unsafe. Because, sometimes we tend to segment things in a manner that does not give us the full picture. By 2013, the nation, particularly Boko Haram, put the nation, into a very serious crisis. They overran a large portion of the northeast and targeted schools, killed teachers, killed students. And it was a real crisis. It was not the kind of crisis where maybe you have the issue of a fence can help you. The fence cannot help you because you have put a fence around a school.
Yeah.
If a whole platoon is coming with Kalashnikovs and AK-47s, what can you do under these particular circumstances? So at the end of the day, I think we need to understand the context that we are dealing with. The context is where it requires, isn't it, not just the usual civil society actions of whistleblowers who will attract people, of this, of that. Yeah, this will work under a normal situation, a normal circumstances where there is some semblance of peace around those particular areas. The people who abduct these children, we have to understand, are people who are fully armed.
Yes.
They come not in tens or whatever, isn't a small group. They come maybe a maximum of 50 gunmen, fully armed, isn't it? And make sure that they can ram their way into any situation that they find themselves, and will be able to catch these children. Yeah, this is the situation. But at the end of the day, can we just look at it as a system and say, okay, we need only the military that should be there? Yes, we need the military to stabilize the situation. We need the military to be around, because even if you have, a situation whereby, you have those fast responders, they have to be fully armed, because they don't know the situation that they're going to find.
But Dr. Babuyi, as you explaining this, a lot of thoughts will readily come to mind. How many schools in the rural communities will you send military? When people look at the situation, yes, we are also at the forefront of this.
I will take you there now.
Okay.
The number of schools, that actually, we have, Nigeria now, has, getting to about 171,000 basic education institutions all over the country. In fact, if you look at the figures from 2018 to 2018, I think the figure was about 146,000 in terms of ECCD, primary and junior secondary. But the figures have jumped to about, 16.9%.
Is this for both public and private?
Yeah, public and private. Okay. Exactly, public and private. So it's very important for us to realize the spread, isn't it, that we have of schools and of institutions, and as well as the numbers we have in the schools. We have to protect 46 million kids attending the schools. So, yeah, having looked at it, you cannot have the military in every school. You cannot have the military in every location. So I think that's how the Safe School Initiative then started coming in. Initially, on a more, isn't it, you know, on simple terms, maybe, isn't it, school guards, whistleblowers, who can alert people, and so on and so forth. But later only to realize that even if you alert people, you're alerting them to come and be killed. So I think that's when, isn't it, you know, the national security and defense, isn't it, you know, of course, started getting involved very seriously with a center that, isn't it, you know, is well equipped to be tracking, isn't it, where these problems are, and can send the first responders that we are talking about. And I think it has worked very well, isn't it? You know, we have been working with them. For us, now, if there is a force outside, you know, the fence now will make sense. Where at least before these people will respond, people will have some barriers that will make it difficult for them to move out of the school. Okay. Yeah, but of course, you know, there are other consequences that may follow. So we have been working, isn't it, you know, as part of, you know, the government program to see how do you secure schools. Yeah. But they also now link up these schools with the national security agencies that can quickly respond and be able to see what they can do. Okay. It's a very difficult situation.
I remember there was another initiative then, like a coach coaching the students and on self-defense. How far have we gone with this one? As in, okay, as you rightly said before, the security agencies will come in. The students on their own, what can they do? How can they protect themselves or defend themselves to some extent?
Rather than school.
But please don't forget that we are dealing with early childhood kids. But we are dealing with primary school ages 6 to 11.
So basically, what kind of provision of security measures can schools provide?
The measure is where the teachers will be taught, isn't it, you know, of how to safeguard these kids, move them to at least some safe areas, isn't it, you know, away from where maybe, isn't it, you know, they suspect, isn't it, the people are coming through, and so on and so forth. It's largely defensive. There is nothing much they can do in terms of offensive in facing these particular people. Yeah. And the idea is maybe, you know, give sufficient time for those people who will respond, isn't it, that crisis come, isn't it, you know, and take them to safety. Okay. But otherwise, in terms of self-defense and so on and so forth, a 7-year-old, isn't it, you know, engaging in self-defense against...
Yes, don't underestimate our children of
No, I know, but you know that you have to be careful also not to put them in danger.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so, Dr. Abuja, I know security is very critical. In as much as the UBE programs are trying to see how it can breach the infrastructural deficits, because ensuring basic infrastructure comes with a lot of funding. And if you want to go to rural areas where we get to see some of these kidnappings happen in schools, they're in deplorable state, Dr. Abuja. And I want you to, you know, tell us what the Commission is doing so far to bridge that gap. You want to see that a child's future is not mortgaged, because education is the foundation for every child. And we're dealing with a high number of out-of-school children, and then we're trying to see, or rather the nation is trying to see that children get enrolled in school. But again, where are the schools? What is the state of the schools?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's an issue that has been, you know, on the front burner. You know, and why is it? Because infrastructure, along with other inputs, you know, within the system, is essential to provide the kind of environment that is conducive to life. So far, don't forget that part of what the government has done in the distribution formula is to ensure that 50% of the amount that is given to states comes as a matching grant. You know, so if, for example, this year, UBEC is given about 253 billion. So just, you know, I always tell people, just make the arithmetic, isn't it, divided by 2 first as matching grant. Now, that matching grant, isn't it, may end up giving every state about 3.5 billion. The state brings 3.5 billion, and it gets, isn't it, about 7 billion. And that's what, serves as the minimum that, it is not the minimum, isn't it, the amount of money required for them, isn't it, to go into the field, look at classrooms that they needed to repair, additional classrooms that are required, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, have the system working. Unfortunately, many states are not adding a single kobo to what one gets out of the matching grant and the counterpart funding. And it's very important for us to spend.
That was why you were mentioning the role of the state government at the start.
Exactly, because unless we can have serious monies coming into this system, in terms of, isn't it, the requirements of the various states and so on and so forth. You are talking of, 50% of minimum of 50% of classrooms, depending upon which zone you are, isn't it, are instead of dilapidation.
Yeah.
And how will it take, and I had that discourse with people. I said, okay, please look at the situation. If I have to renovate, and I gave them an example of some of an instruction we had to renovate a particular school. That school required $250 million. The state where it was renovated received that year 1.5 billion. And it matched that particular amount with another 1.5 billion. So having 3 billion. And I said, okay, that state has 1,932 basic education schools. With this number, I assure you 40% are in the same state of dilapidation with the school that we went and examined. So 3 billion, if you have, isn't it, a number of a minimum of 30-40% in that particular state, it means if you now divide, isn't it, the maximum you can get if it's $250 million that is required to renovate that particular school, isn't it, is 444. You can only renovate 12 schools. So when we talk about lack of resources within the basic education sector, we know what we are talking about. Because we need to, the amount that we have in UBEC and that is being given to states, as long as states are not putting up any amount, these are amounts that can only stem the rate, not the dilapidation.
Like support.
It's just
provide support.
It's support. So as a nation now, we have to look at this particular problem. Fortunately, for example, this year, the amount have doubled. But of course, we have some inflationary pressures, a lot of those particular things. It requires the funding. And I'm glad when I hear about infrastructural fund and so on and so forth. We have to find innovative ways in which we can take care of our infrastructure, especially school infrastructure. So these are issues, I think, that are very important to us to understand how the funding goes. But besides just having classrooms, we also need other facilities in terms of equipping these particular classrooms, in terms of having the teachers. I know you will come to the
qualified,
teacher
issue.
The writing materials.
Before we even go far, Dr. Maboy, one of the challenges we used to have with the this issue of funding between UBEC and state is the matching grant. So how are the states responding now? Any improvement?
There has been a lot of improvement. Okay. The improvement has been very noticeable. A lot of states, I think, have been making a lot of effort to see how would they, assess the funds, in time. Now, at the moment, they have assessed, I think, almost few states. There are few states that are still lagging at 2022. There are others that perhaps for the last 5 years, one state in the southeast, and I think about 3 other states elsewhere, including the southwest. They have not accessed from 2019.
So one can imagine the situation of basic education in such a state.
In that particular state, I had a situation whereby somebody confronted me on this issue, would say, okay, why are our classrooms dilapidated? What are you people doing about it? I said, well, ask the state. What is the state doing about it? Because we have the money, we have written them. We have urged them to come and access the money. They have not done so for 4 years.
You know, it's quite unfortunate, Dr. Boboyi, while government at the federal level is pushing, and then at the state level where you connect directly with the people, you understand the peculiar challenges to each state, talking about the state governments now. It's quite unfortunate if we're not seeing that political will from what you're saying. Now, what other strategy? Because the responsibility, a lot will say, still saddles on your back. Oh, your back is responsible to provide the funding for the infrastructure and all of that. So which other strategy are you devising to ensure that these state governments key into these initiatives and there's this proactive, steps taken for implementation?
2-3 things. Okay. First and foremost, is the advocacy issue that is required. How do we link up with the governors? How do we link up with the state governments? How do we link up, isn't it, with civil society? That would make the necessary noise,
yes,
isn't it, in making sure that state governments are alive to their responsibilities. Fortunately, as I said to you earlier, the situation has changed. A lot of the new governors who have come in, isn't it, seems to have a lot of interest in education and are pushing very hard to really make a difference in their own states, including those states that had been lagging behind. A lot of them have been able to put it. I don't want to mention figures immediately for those that have not, unaccessed funds.
Okay.
You know that the system is that the funds are not ready to be accessed until the 31st of December of that year,
yes,
of the year we are talking about, because these are monthly releases that are actually given to UBEC. So these monthly releases now is from the first quarter. And that's why UBEC usually around the first quarter is saddled with a huge amount. But I tell people that perhaps you also have to ask us, if the money of the previous year is not there, isn't it, what had happened to it?
Accountability.
Exactly, because, the money has to be there. But unfortunately, by the time we go into the following year, when we have to account for unaccessed funds, isn't it, it will balloon in terms of, isn't it, and that's how now we have a figure of over 50 billion, isn't it, unaccessed, isn't it, as far as, isn't it, these funds are concerned. But states have begun accessing these funds. They have begun doing that. And don't forget, again, 2024 will keep on accumulating up to December, because these are monthly things. And states don't want to come every month to come and, 2 states have put a strategy that I really liked, Kano and Delta, where they paid their entire, isn't it, monies, the counterfunding for the year, isn't it, so that every quarter you just transfer the money to them, that is there. But, it requires you to be fairly rich as a state, isn't it, to be able to do that in that regard. So, at the moment, I think, yes, we are making progress. But we have to engage, and we have been engaging with the governments. We have been engaging, looking at fora where we have to do that. We have completed the national personnel audit also of 2022-2023, and part of it is also regional advocacy to begin to discuss with state governments and state officials of the state of education in their own states. Where are we in terms of infrastructure? In some states, the picture is not a nice one, isn't it? To behold. There are some states also that are making progress. To recognize that those that are making this particular progress and see, isn't it? How they could be recognized, isn't it? And be rewarded in that particular regard.
Okay.
Those are states
Rashidat, we have to go on a break.
Okay.
Hold the thought. Just hold that thought. Okay. Let's take a break. We're back shortly. Please don't go anywhere. All right, thank you for being there. The conversation is still on revamping basic education in Nigeria. Dr. Boboyi, Rashidat was going to pick up with a question before we took that break, so please go ahead.
Kudos to those states that they've been accessing their fund. Now, on our own part, what follow-up
That's
are
on
we?
UBEC's part now.
Yes, federal government part. What follow-up are we doing to ensure that those funds were judiciously used? They are put to use what is meant for.
No, thank you very much. I think this is a very important question, because it's not just the funds that are provided, but also the judicious utilization of these funds, to produce the infrastructure that we are looking for. And part of this problem, I think, has to be now seen, addressing this problem has to be seen within the wider context of our guidelines for accessing these funds. First and foremost, a state government would have to account for the previous funds. Don't forget that the Act also makes this as part of, you cannot get the next tranche of money, from the UBE fund without having to account for the previous fund. So our people, when any state is ready to accept the funds, we send our engineers and others to go and assess, have you attained the 75% required of completion in terms of the infrastructure of the previous fund you have received for that, because you are not going to get a single kobo, before doing that. Having been satisfied that yes, the state has achieved that particular milestone, is again to tell it, now tell us what you want to do with your next tranche. And that's when they have to now have a work plan, the projects that they want and where the projects are going to be sited, because it's important for us to track these projects and see where they are, and be sure that at the end of the day, we could track these projects. Then they have to come and defend it. Besides just bringing it, it's not just telling us, they have to come and defend it. And our physical planning department will have to assess and look at the implementability of these particular projects. But even before that, again, we have to send the engineers to go and look at the sites. Are the sites even suitable for these projects? Or are there similar projects there that now could easily be substituted, because it's also a part of the challenge, that one has to face. So having done that, this is when, they come back, these people will come and do the defense, and at the end of the day, do the corrections and so on and so forth. We go through the bills that they have provided, and that's when we give them the letter to proceed, And now they have to come and sign a bond, bring their bankers, bring the chairman of SUBEP, along with our officials, to the do's and don'ts as far as the funds are concerned. So they sign that bond, and it's only after that that we release the money to the state. Now thereafter, again, we have periodic checks on
for quality assurance.
To make sure that it's quality. But there are challenges, because we, for some time, we used to appoint consultants. But this consultant will stay for the entire year without doing any job. So we felt that actually we needed to change the system and, push the states to be able to kickstart these projects, early, whenever they receive their money. But our challenge at the moment is that a state will access the fund, but it becomes a difficult thing to get the executive governor to approve the commencement of the projects.
Now, I'm trying to get this. Despite the rigorous process involved, there's still the delay.
The delay in the takeoff of the project.
Okay.
For example, now, the last, every quarter, we go for financial monitoring with the Ministry of Finance, with the Accountant General's Office, with all the other agencies, financial agencies, to go and look at their books based on the action plan that they have submitted, are they spending the funds, according to that budgeted, amount. Now, if the state has not started the project, we are at its mercy. Because we cannot now go and tell their account. We cannot go and we have frozen accounts. But
because I was just going to ask you what stringent measures did you take for those found wanting?
We freeze accounts.
Okay.
We freeze accounts. Of course, we have been taken to court by about 2 states, that felt that we don't have the right
to freeze
the account of a state government.
When your monies are there.
Yeah, the monies are there. The monies are there. So I think we had to. So it's like David Goliath struggle, isn't it? You know, situation to tell the state, yeah, no, look here, you cannot have your way, just have this money and then you dump it. And inflation is coming, particularly, isn't it, you know, the last few months. Yes. Now the state government will have to come back again to ask you, please, can we revalidate our own action plans? So there are a lot of challenges in the process, but we engage, and engage very strongly, isn't it, you know, with the state. And if we find certain things, isn't it, you know, not going right, isn't it, we have no problem, isn't it, telling the state, no, we cannot continue. We have to freeze the account, but at the end of the day, if still the state is not, we withdraw the money back to the central bank.
That's a challenge. I can only imagine how the Commission is dealing with that. Another aspect of the challenges that is very glaring is the out-of-school children. But I know recently the Commission, you know, challenged the SUBEBs, you know, to step up in their open school program to see that out of the number of out-of-school children reduce and every child is given the opportunity to learning, you know, access to learning, access to basic education. And you know the challenge that has been peculiar to Nigeria. If you want to look at the northern region, the girl child, low enrollment, you want to look at the southeastern part, the boys are the ones leaving school because they have to go, they're not even being enrolled because they have to go learn a trade or so. That is another challenge I'm sure the Commission is still on.
No, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. I think it's a challenge that we have to, as a country, see how we can overcome. Why? Because if you cannot take the child to school, isn't it, you know, the whole idea of even learning poverty and so on and so forth, from day one, you know, that this child, isn't it, you know, cannot learn. But what are the factors behind out-of-school children? First, the income of the family. Poor parents, isn't it, you know, a child who is out of school is more likely to come from the lowest quintile, isn't it, you know, of society, isn't it, in terms of economic, isn't it, you know, well-being, if I can put it that way. We need to look at it and see how we can really, isn't it, you know, face that particular issue. The second aspect, isn't it, you know, besides also, isn't it, you know, looking at the issue of economy, is also to see the ideological dimension. A lot of, and that's why the far northern states, isn't it, you know, have this particular problem. You have people who believe that, isn't it, their children should not go to a conventional school. And the whole origin of the Boko Haram problem, isn't it? You know, that you know, but you know, the more benign non-military Boko Haram had been an integral part of many of our societies. And I think we have to do that through enlightenment. We have to do that, isn't it, through a lot of efforts to tell people that yes, they can integrate. They can, nobody is stopping anybody from studying and memorizing the Quran and studying, isn't it, you know, the conventional Islamic books and so on and so forth. But for God's sake, we are living in the 21st century where you need also to function within this society and to contribute, isn't it, to that particular society. And I think a lot of our focus for quite some time had been how do we help, isn't it, you know, states integrate? How do we, you know, get them, isn't it, you know, bring in the conventional school subjects along? And fortunately, I think it has catch on. A lot of our schools now in the northeast, in the northwest, and some parts of north central, isn't it, you know, including even the southwest, isn't it, have, you know, in fact, this particular issue of integration started from the southwest, not from the north. It was an early period, as early as about some people put the date of 1897. Sorry, I'm a historian. Isn't it, you know, others are putting it about 1902 or so. That's why you have the first integrated school. And the whole idea is, isn't it, and subsequently the various Islamic missionary organizations, isn't it, you know, made it a point of bringing these children and making them, isn't it, go through the Islamic curriculum as well as the conventional curriculum. Now, you know, when we look at all those issues, particularly up north, because the northern states actually, isn't it, you know, provide about over 70% of the out-of-school children in Nigeria. unfortunately, the other states in the South, as you are saying the other time, isn't it, when you started your introduction, is having another problem, particularly Southeast and aspects of South-South where we have the boy-child problem. And it is where I think a lot of effort was put in making sure that, isn't it, we could provide some vocational, isn't it, institutions where these kids can finish their school, but also begin to learn, isn't it, the various trades that would be very useful to them.
Yes, when we talk about open schooling, I know part of it is taking the school to the children wherever they are. How can we actually achieve this? Because that is very, very important.
No, thank you very much. Again, it's an issue that we have been grappling with. Before COVID, we had a memorandum of understanding with Commonwealth of Learning in Canada, because they are the major agency internationally, isn't it, that had been at the forefront of promoting open schooling. Many countries, that we visited and seeing what they are doing, isn't it, we are very much encouraged that it could work. But unfortunately, by the time we started under Commonwealth of Learning, the COVID, isn't it, thing hit, and then the project had to be put, isn't it, on hold. But fortunately, after COVID, we resuscitated it, but it's part of a larger program. And for now, telling the states, look here, how do we cooperate with you? How do we support you to open, isn't it, to have these open schools and sustain them? And I think when we say, it took quite some time to convince them that, no, look here, this is something that can also achievable, that we can have. At the moment, I think we have about 24 states that have signed a memorandum of understanding with UBEC and our external partners. What we have done actually is to tell the states that, look here, federal government on its own cannot come to a state and take a child to school.
Yes.
It cannot come to a state and say that, no, we are responsible for this child or for this group or for that, and so on and so forth. Is how do we, to make an impact and to be able to achieve the success we want, we have to work with the state, and the state has to be serious.
Because there is free and compulsory education. That is the law.
Yeah, it is.
So why is it not been
but even the law now,
domesticated?
even the law, and that's I think the issue that we need to understand, is that, okay, the law says somebody who has not taken his child, isn't it, going to be fined, isn't it, that much, and so on and so forth. Of course, nowadays, isn't it, everybody will agree to be fined because the amount is not that significant that you can pay. Yeah, but now you expect maybe education marshals to be running around on behalf of the federal government? Or is it now the local governments and the local authorities? Because the MPEC law before UBEC has these district committees and village committees. And these are the ones that are responsible for these kinds of programs.
And that's where advocacy comes in.
Yeah,
that collaboration with even heads of communities, because you see this practice more in rural areas.
Yeah, because again, this is part of the process that we are going, that has started in looking at the UBEC Act, to see how do we now incorporate those elements, having experienced the operation over a period of time. How do we now put in certain key elements? How do we address the issue of unaccessed funds? If you don't access it with a particular period of time, does it go into a common pool that we should go for direct intervention? Or isn't it, or do we give the state maybe half of it later or whatever, isn't it, in the direct intervention or what? It's an issue that we have to address. But also, how do we reactivate those elements within the society that could contribute to the implementation of basic education at the state?
It is very, very important. Ruth, you remember the partnership with district head and local government, people in the rural area, play a very major role in surmounting this challenge of some of our diseases in Nigeria. They are talking about the health sector, particularly
yes, they play crucial role.
polio. Yes, so we need to work hand in hand with our traditional institutions, district head and what have you, to ensure that our children just the way parents were urged and cajoled to take their children for vaccination, these children should also be taken to school.
So the parents too also have a role.
Yes, a very important role.
They do. But you know that if you go back, the native authorities were the ones that were running primary education. Later, I think, as the local government reforms came and so on and so forth, you had the local education authorities. The local education authorities are not even taking care of primary education. The other structures within the state, made it a little bit more cumbersome, trying to see where responsibility lies. And I think the law now, that we have, how do I put it? The effort to reform the act, is looking at these issues. What have we learned over the years?
Okay,
well, okay, now, Doctor, quickly before we go, let's quickly talk on sharing news. Let's talk about our smart schools, our digital resource centers. Where are we?
Okay, no. I think we are at the right place. Our digital resource center has been completed. It will soon be launched. And
what do we intend to achieve with that?
It is a training center.
And earlier you mentioned teachers training. Will that also be part of it?
Exactly. It will anchor the training of a new generation of teachers that are trained on digital platforms and manipulating these platforms, deploying IT, in the classroom and so on and so forth. And I think we have already started. We have trained, a lot of teachers now on selected from different parts of the country, in different, pedagogies. The second level, the Digital Resource Center is also supposed to coordinate the smart schools.
Okay.
Every state has a smart school that we have built, and equipped, where every child is going to have a tablet, where, you have digital boards, the software, the networking, everything and so on and so forth. And 7 of them are the zonal centers, including FCG. And these zonal centers also serve as training centers, again, for the zone, And I think we are very, very hopeful that pushing forward, we are going to make a difference.
Okay,
and perhaps raise the level of education to where we want it to be for our children for the 21st century.
I want to get your final thoughts, even though we're pressed for time. I know you're very passionate to see that no child is left behind if we're looking at basic education. And you've just shared that passion. And I don't envy your job because of the challenges. So in brief, just summary, just talk to Nigerians, talk to parents, to help that child get into school.
No, thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. And my appeal to every parent in Nigeria is to prioritize the education of his or her own children. This is the future. But my appeal does not just go to the parent. It also goes to the local authorities that we have and to the state governments. And in fact, to the entire nation. Our future lies in making sure that we can provide our children with the kind of education that can help them become good citizens, help them build a future, not only for themselves, but for Nigeria.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Hamid Boboyi. He's the Executive Secretary, Universal Basic Education Commission. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work, and we'll continue to monitor your records.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rashidat Mustafa Olagunju, thank you so much for your contributions on platform.
Thank you for having me.
All right, revamping basic education in Nigeria is what we've been discussing, and there's a whole lot. That child has the right to go to school. And if we want to look at the SDG Goal 4, that promotes equitable and inclusive education. 2030 is just around the corner. What are we doing as a people? They say education for all is the responsibility of all. And that's Platform. I'm Ruth Agwe.